I think they also said they will also rely on security reports and advice while they also do their what
security reports are for that moment when the reports were conducted. It is the security at the moment of the election that really matters.
Would they alone be competent to give that assessment?
No. The government needs to provide enough machinery to protect the people at the time when that election is going to take place. If it takes for soldiers to be lined up on every street around the areas where election is going to, so be it. Let that happen. But let the people who can vote, vote.
You know, there's a lot of talk about the permanent voter card and the temporary one. Yeah. Have you collected yours?
Yes, I have.
What did you see? What was the experience? I mean, what are people saying when you collected yours?
In my area, it was not difficult for me to collect my voter's card because the electoral, the officers there from INEC were quite efficient at the time when they came. But I know that there are certain areas where they just won't be able to collect their PVCs because there's so much chaos in the area. So much chaos in the sense that they do not have enough electoral officers to distribute these cards. It's quite an expansive area. Alimosho local government for that, for instance. A lot of people have not collected their
even
PVCs
if they decentralize it and say, well...
If they do that now, then perhaps it will improve the method of collection. If they decentralize. Because I remember the day we were collecting our own, we had to send some transport to pick up the electoral officer from somewhere around this area to come into Magodo where I live. If we didn't send the transport, the gentleman was stuck here. He didn't have a means.
That shouldn't happen on election day even.
It shouldn't. But that's the kind of thing that we sometimes see, logistics problems. And sometimes I want to believe it may be deliberate.
Why?
You see, there are ways to truncate elections that are a little far away from the issue of voters' cards and things like that. If you allow for things like logistics to become a problem, you truncate an election. Because if the voting materials are not there at the centers where people are supposed to vote, how do you want them to vote? Now, PVC collection is an issue. Without one, you cannot vote. Therefore, I want INEC to be able to appreciate that INEC will fail the nation if they do not take the issue of delivering PVCs to individuals very seriously. They have to work 24/7 in the next 2 weeks to ensure that all registered people get a PVC. Failure for them to do that would make them reverse the law and say that anybody who has a temporary voter's card should come there and be authenticated and they will use it to vote.
Can that happen in
that
short time?
Believe me, it can. Because
look at all the time it's taken us to for them to sort out the PVCs.
It's unfortunate because the suggestion that would have come from me would be shift the election a little forward. But I don't think anybody wants the election to be shifted. Everybody wants to vote on the 14th of February. And therefore, for us to do that at this point, we're on the 16th of January, for God's sake.
So you see the readiness in Nigerians?
Nigerians want to vote.
But
that's the truth.
Realistically,
yeah.
If we're faced with that situation where we feel, look, what can we do? We have to move it a little bit. Do you think anybody will listen to that, even if it's a real thing?
Well, if they give good enough reasons for the election to be moved a little forward, 1 week, 2 weeks, not more than that, let it hold in February. But at least the time you are given, you give a reason for giving that time.
Take, for instance, I think INEC says they've distributed 68.8 million permanent, no, 68.8 million are the total number of registered voters.
Correct.
So now it's up to 40 that has been distributed.
Yeah.
So you have that backlog.
That's right.
So if it's taken us all that time to distribute 40,
yes,
the remaining time, can they meet up with that?
I think they can meet up if they mean to meet up. If they work 24/7, 7 days a week for the next 2 weeks, all registered voters will get their PVC.
Because we don't want the burnout syndrome to set in the ad hoc staff who are going to be involved in the elections as well. You still then pulling this off.
Let them bring in a handful of people who are going to support this exercise for now.
What percentage of people would you say, what percentage of distribution would you say would confer on these elections legitimacy?
Believe me, even if you give all the 68-point-something million people their voters card, it is those who come out on the election day that will make the election count. And usually the rule of thumb is that if you have more than half of the registered voters come out to vote, then that election can count. So essentially it means that if you're looking at the distribution that has happened now, in another 2 weeks, if they can cover up to maybe about 60 million people haven't gotten their voters card, I think they would have gone close enough to saying that they've done, what they need to do. Because the remaining 10 million, perhaps, may be part of those people who you could say will not come out to vote. Because some people certainly will not come out to vote.
So just a question here from, or a suggestion from Yusuf here. He says that INEC can change the date of elections just in those states, and they can pick maybe any other date for those states. We can go ahead with the other states. You think that's a good suggestion?
It all depends on what is on ground there. Like I said, if it is only 2 local governments that's affected in a state, election can go on in the remaining local governments.
Talking about what's on ground very quickly here now, provisions of so many other things for INEC. Someone also made mention of, power, which is very key to power up the card readers. So we'll be talking about generating sets. We'll be talking about logistics, movement of persons with electoral materials. What can INEC be told to be doing now, knowing full well that your estate gave, means of transportation to some of their officials just for you to get your PVC?
Well, like I said, there are many ways to rig an election, but INEC, that is called Independent Electoral Commission, has the absolute responsibility to ensure that all the reasons that may be given for election not to hold or that election will not be credible, all those reasons they need to address, and they have the time to address that now. If it is electricity that is going to be an anticipation that you won't have, buy generators. All these small generators will be able to power the thing, and it's not going to cost too much.
Even if they don't budget for it.
Even if they don't budget for it. Even if they don't budget for it. It is a question of credibility. Let them come out and say, we have asked government to give us money to buy generators for all these places, and we didn't get the money. They would have at least gone that far. You see, essentially the point that must be made is the purpose, sincerity of purpose. If you're sincere about conducting a free and fair election, you need to go all the hog to be able to do that.
And they should also remember to put petrol in those generating sets.
Precisely. But don't worry, as long as the generator is there and it is just petrol, people in the area who want the election to hold will voluntarily give petrol to the generator. Now, but you see, there is an issue that I also would like to comment on. The peace pact that was signed by all the political
presidential
candidates. How do you ensure peace by just signing a pact? It's not enough. What needs to be done is for all the presidential candidates to take responsibility, to have a meeting with all the governors in the different states, in their governorship candidates in the different states in the federation, and tell them that the onus is on them in their state to ensure that you have a violence-free election. And the governorship candidates in themselves have a responsibility to call all the local government chairmanship candidates in their state and say the responsibility is on you to ensure that there will be violence-free election. So let each person who is contesting know that you want to emerge as a successful candidate in a free and fair and violence-free election. It's not just enough to sign the pact, because there will be problem, there will be violence in areas where people feel disenfranchised. There will be violence in areas where people see acts that may amount to cheating.
So you think that INEC does have a great role to play here?
They do have a great role to play. And they need to do that now. They don't need to shift that. They need to be able to let every contestant take some responsibility to ensure that the election is violence-free.
And this is at all levels, not just at the
At all levels.
not just at the presidential level.
Not just at the presidential. Because it is not the president who is going to ask people to fight out there on the street. It is those who are close to the grassroots. So the pact is just a moral booster. It's just that morality aspect of it that counts. But outside of that, they need to go all the way down.
Okay, Dr. Adetokunbo Adedeji is a member of Professionals for Change. Thank you for coming on today on the program.
You're most welcome.
We'll have another perspective coming up in just a moment. Please join us again.